نظر به خوب رویان گر حرام است گناهگر این باشد تات کدام است صوفیان مستند و زاهد به خبر از کی پرسم من ره میخانه را ره میخانه و مسجد کدام است ره مسجد کدام است که یردو بر من موسیقی حرام است که یردو بر من موسیقی حرام که یردو بر من موسیقی حرام است میخانه و مسجد کدام است میخانه و مسجد کدام است بر من موسیقی حرام است بر من موسیقی حرام است میخانه و مسجد کدام است میخانه میان مسجد و दम रहे मैं खाना
Hello, hello, check, check, check. We got some audio coming through. Let me know. Give folks maybe just like one more minute to try to tune in if they're gonna tune in, and then I'll get started here. How's everybody doing? And just to be clear, I'm gonna just be rambling here for the first 15-20 minutes or so, but after that we will get into an AMA portion of this. So yeah, save some questions. Hello, awesome. So the topics we're gonna go over today. Hi, I'm Andre J. There's my catchphrase. Got that out of the way. Topics I'm going to go over today. Kind of a bunch of things. Talk about the updates for Waaave Pool, and I've got the updated image of Waaave Pool happening right here. We're going to talk about the audio reactive spectral mesh update. Which is coming along nicely. I don't really have it unbuggy enough to demo for you right now, but I'll be recording a video either next Monday or Tuesday and getting it up on YouTube that goes over what's happening with the audio reactive spectral mesh. It's basically finished. There's like 2 annoying bugs, and I know exactly how to fix them. It's just going to take like 2-3 hours to actually do it. Artificial life, updates for that. What the fuck happened to gravity waves? What's going on with the desktop version of video waves and all that stuff? And possible ideas I'm going to actually ask and see if anyone has... I'll go through the list of the bonus images I'm working on and see what kind of things people would be interested in the most. Yeah, I think that's it to start with. Yeah, I'll also just very quickly say, unrelated to the other things, I have a VHS AV album that I put out. Well, I'm selling the pre-orders right now. You can find that at the Ultra Terrestrial Kickstarter thing. Maybe I'll put the link somewhere. But yeah, you can buy a copy of one of these up until like 2 weeks from now or so. Yeah, so I guess we'll formally get started and we'll talk about the Waaave Pool updates. So this is in the background here. Well, here. It's kind of pointing things, doesn't really make a lot of sense when I'm in both windows, but so this is the updated version of Waaave Pool, and basically my goal with this update set was to bring in the things that I use. There's a bunch of things that I use like every single time when I'm working with the desktop versions of video waves, and I was just kind of like, all right, let's see if I can make this happen inside of the Raspberry Pi versions, and it turns out I kind of did. So the first thing that I added is the sharpening filter. I kind of wanted to put both a sharpen and a blur in, but it didn't really seem to work out that well. But basically, the knob that used to be input contrast is now sharpening. And you just turn it up, and you get the crazy reaction diffusion lines going on. This is a sharpen that is happening it's a scaled down version of the same thing that's happening in video waves, where it's really only sharpening the brightness value instead of RGB, so it preserves the color information And it's a little bit less intensive, CPU intensive than the standard sharpen algorithm. So it's a real-time optimized sharpen algorithm. For anyone interested in looking at how to optimize real-time kernels on on like embedded systems like a Raspberry Pi, I recommend taking a look at the sharpen shader that's in the project folder, because there's just like one little hacky thing that I do that lets you kind of do like 9 lookups for the price of 5, or the price of 4, really. Depends on what you count as a cost. But yeah, so sharpening is available now, and this will kind of like add another level of things. The other thing that is really, really awesome, well, actually before I tell you about the other thing that's really awesome, let me tell you something that will probably be sort of confusing for literally everyone the first time they use it. So I've added MIDI latching, like a latch thing onto the controls. It's not the hugest deal in Waaave Pool, but if you've played with like auto waves, if you played with what do you call it, artificial life or phosphorm, you notice like when the controls get a little confusing and you hit a button and it switches to like a different set of controls, the parameters would jump. They would always leap to the next value, and then you hit the button back and you'd move something and it would jump right back to that. And that was really, really annoying, and yeah, my bad. So I'm fixing that in all of the images, all of these, for all the 4.5 updates that will be, or 1.5 updates that'll be coming out over before the end of the year. So what that means for you at home is when you first boot up or when you reset, none of the controls will seem to do anything until you hit the 0 point for each one, and you can check on the check the text file that's included for the image. The demo or beta version of Waaave Pool 1.5 is available for download like right now. I put it up like an hour ago. It's on my website, on the usual place where you find images and stuff. So download it, flash it to a card, and please make sure to read the text file. And you'll be able to like test these things out before it gets officially released in like probably a week or so. I want to get at least like 1 or 2 people like working on it to make sure I didn't completely break anything. But yeah, MIDI latching means it might confuse you at first because you're like, why are these controls not doing anything? But you just kind of need to move them around until they get past the 0 point. So yeah, not like a huge upgrade, but like just a subtle little thing that'll make things easier. And it'll also make a huge difference on Waaave Pool now, because there's now the video reactive controls. If you've played with the desktop version of Video Waves, you'll recognize this as being like the texture. Yeah. I'm going to be fixing the colors in Artificial Life overall too, yeah. Does same FM work for AutoWave? Everything in this Waaave Pool will be plugged into AutoWave. It'll probably take at least a week past whenever the official one of this drops for the AutoWave one to drop. But yeah, everything in here ends up in AutoWave. But we have the video reactive controls happening, which is called, what did I call it on Video Waves? Like texture mod or whatever. Long story short, what you can do is you press a button, and all of the controls, instead of directly affecting parameters, are going to map the video input to the brightness of the video input into that parameter. So I turned on video reactive controls, and I'm going to move the X knob a little bit. And check out what's happening in the background there right now. Yeah, text mod is what I call it. So if you can see in the background, and there's a really helpful little, you can see pretty much almost exactly what the camera is seeing, so you can kind of match it up with what's going on in the background. It's going to create this sort of, especially with the sharpen filter, it's going to create this kind of insane sense of depth. And this is the stuff, usually when I do this on Video Waves and I post about it, people are like, whoa, what kind of game engine are you using? Is this like Unity or like Houdini or something? And I'm just like, yeah, no, this is literally like some real-time nonsense here. But yeah, let me just kind of go through. I'll add some Y displacement in there. Let me add some Z. I can map it to the brightness as well. And tiny bit of rotation. But yeah, this sort of combined with the sharpening, I feel like really kind of like ups the ups the game of the Waaave Pool. I'm gonna switch back to regular controls and just key myself completely out, and you'll kind of see what is going on here. See, as I move my head around, my head is currently the brightest thing in the field, so it's kind of like that's whoa, whoa, whoa. That's what's going to be the main thing you see. But yeah, yeah, basically. Any questions on text mods or video reactive stuff or anything before I move on? All right, so Waaave Pool, sharpening, video reactive. Something else I've added into Waaave Pool, and I'm not going to demo it here, but I'll do a separate video that I'll pre-record. We'll kind of tell you what's going on. I'm adding LFOs in, and I'm not really sure how official they're going to be, or to what extent, like how they're going to be like finally implementized. Currently, you need to have a USB keyboard on hand for the LFOs to work. If you're interested in testing out the LFOs, download the new image, read the text file, and try some things out and see how it works. Currently, it's maybe about like 60% to where I'd like to be at it, and I'm going to keep kind of playing around. But yeah, LFOs will at least be sort of like a janky bonus thing you can play with, if not like a fully fledged feature of Waaave Pool. Yeah, I think that is about it for the current Waaave Pool updates. There's some other things behind the hood that I fixed up, just kind of tweaking some of the ranges of like brightness, hue, and saturation. Playing around a little bit with like how like some of the things happen, a tiny bit of how things happen on the shaders, but otherwise it's not really going to be too much different from how you've used it before. Just like you could pretty much use it exactly the same as how you've been using it for forever, except now you can add the video reactive stuff and add the sharpening. So yeah, that's the Waaave Pool biz for now. So next thing I want to talk about is audio reactive spectral mesh. This will be it's going to be exactly what it sounds like. It's just like Auto Wave is to Waaave Pool, the Auto Mesh will be to Spectral Mesh. Exact same engine, exact same mapping frequencies to the different values. So far it's been a lot of fun to play with. And yeah, I'll do like a longer video where I have like, I just like I didn't really want to set up like the full like all my synthesizers and like another mixer and everything to like dial things in for this one. And like I said, also it's a little buggy still at the moment. But yeah, audio reactive spectral mesh. If you want to do this DIY, the way you upgrade is the same way you'd upgrade the Waaave Pool to the spectral mesh. If you want to purchase an upgrade package, we'll have those for sale on the Etsy shop in about a week from now, maybe. I want to make sure everything is 100% finished in a form that I would like give to people before I can sell anything. But yeah, that's pretty much spectral mesh, auto mesh. I don't know if that's the actual name. It's a pretty stupid name. But as you may know, I don't really have an issue with stupid names. Open to suggestions. Let me know if there's any questions on audio reactive spectral mesh. Otherwise, I'll move on to updates for artificial life. We're going to add the latching onto things so that you'll actually be able to know what the fuck you're controlling at any given point. Yeah, it was really kind of janky. So that's the main thing I think will really affect people. Two other things that I'm personally adding in because I really want to have them happening. Spectral active. That's pretty good. Will be pulse width modulation, and pulse width modulation will be sort of a secondary thing on the phase modulation section for each oscillator. I really wanted to add the pulse width modulation in because working with, when I'm doing artificial life into Waaave Pool, I really want to be able to control sort of the width and the thickness and like the brightness to a stronger extent than I have been able to. I'm going to mess around with the frequency ranges a little bit more and maybe tone all the frequency ranges down a bit, just because it goes a little hard into like aliasing, like video aliasing white noise oftentimes, and I feel like using the smallest possible ranges for things instead of like the ones that we have currently might be like a good place to start. If people really have strong opinions on that, I can change my mind, but that's where I'm at. And I'm going to try to fix up the color. I have a couple of ideas of how to make the color better. Currently, it's like an RGB offset, so like all the oscillators just work in grayscale, kind of the same way like any video oscillator system does. And then like right at the end of the chain, we take the RGB values and you're able to sort of dial in an offset value to each one of them. It was, you know, it was incredibly easy to whip up. In practice, me playing with it, I've found it to really be lacking. I think working in RGB is kind of annoying. Yeah, thanks. I'm glad other people think that way too. The color thing, so I have two ideas for working on the color. One is going to be adding like a 3 or 4 band colorizer function in to replace the current color section thing, and that would work, you know, very much like a tiny little version of chromatic aberration just tossed into the mix. The other thing would be kind of tweaking in more of the just trying to like tweak the RGB things a little bit better, so there's just like more colors you can get. I'm not 100% positive how to do that, but I have a couple of experimental ideas of how to make that work. The third idea I had was just to sort of map like brightness ranges to like a hue cycle. I think that's kind of lame, but it would possibly work better than the current RGB situation. Does anyone have any thoughts on artificial life's color scheme, color zones, before I move on to the next section? Oh yeah, something else I did add into Waaave Pool, I forgot to mention this. So we have so we've got the usual old toroidal universe mode. This other thing I added in from the something I used a lot from the desktop version is mirror mode instead of toroidal mode. So the mirror mode, it'll definitely work a lot more so if you're doing like rotations and stuff. But what mirror does is mirror the outside of the frame instead of like wrapping things around. So you get kind of things like this happening. So this is mirror mode. If I switch it to toroidal, then you see this kind of a thing happens. So toroidal is more of that traditional kind of fractalizing thing that happens. And mirror mode is a bit more like cheeseball psychedelic, maybe. Another thing I did was I tried to fix up how hue inversion works. It works, I think it works actually pretty good at this point. So this is hue inversion. So previously when we did hue inversion, nothing really seemed to happen. It just seemed to kind of like stutter out wherever it was at and not really make much happen. But the new version of hue inversion, I think, actually kind of does some more stuff. Yeah. So, moving on to the next topic. Gravity waves. Some people may know that I was working on a video mixer project. I started working on it heavily in February of this year, and I finished up about 90% of the design side of the gravity waves. And then I pretty much got to the point where I was going to start testing it with hardware. And two problems showed up. as soon as so like the structure of it works. The desktop, if there was like, if all I had to do was just run it on the desktop, like it would work fine. If all I wanted to do is just run it with USB cams on like a Jetson Nano, it works fine. The main problem is that I really want it to do very low or as low latency, at least not higher latency than like a Roland V4EX analog and digital capture at the same time. And then I ran into two problems that I think a lot of people trying to develop things in 2021 have come up with. If, you know, you may have noticed that like Cro-Magnons haven't shipped yet. Is that there's like a shortage of like fucking components happening, which stems back to some decisions that like semiconductor manufacturers made like 2 years ago. But long story short, things are incredibly expensive to purchase, and some things are not just incredibly expensive to purchase, but just not available until maybe like several months from now or even next year. So yeah, trying to test out boards and shit that I could actually try to get like low latency, high quality analog and digital input for that was just kind of like, I just kind of stalled out right there. Also, I probably need to have at least, you know, probably 2 months to play it safe, 2 months of like steadily working on the program, and like an extra like, you know, $2,000 to $5,000 just to like throw at the problem that doesn't go anywhere else. So didn't really have any of those things. So that's more or less where Gravity's Waves is at. Yeah, I don't really know that that's like anything like that like we can do anything about right now. My thoughts on the project are I would like to release the desktop version at some point, and I've been sort of, whenever I have free time, I've been adapting parts of the Gravity Waves project to work in a very limited way. Instead of a video mixer, just make sure the video processing and the video feedback part of that works on Raspberry Pis. So Gravity Waves, who the heck knows when it'll actually come out. It might actually be faster and cheaper for me to run it on an FPGA system as opposed to the Jetson Nano system. Either way, both of them have been kind of like time-consuming and expensive to work with. So the best I can say right now is that something interesting will pop up on the Pis by the end of first quarter next year. It won't be a video mixer, but it will be something which utilizes a lot of the same thing that Gravity Waves does. If it's like, you know, Waaave Pool to Electric Boogaloo or something, like, that'll be pretty cool. But yeah, that's sort of where that one is at. Because yeah, I put together a really interesting suite of things, and for anyone out there who's like interested in like the development side of things, you can check on my GitHub. A lot of the stuff that I wrote for Gravity Waves I've compiled up into 2 little handy folders that are just sort of general shader utilities for anyone interested in developing video stuff for like real-time video stuff on the desktop or on Raspberry Pis or whatever. And I just put together almost all of the stuff that I wrote and or adapted from like other sources into a couple of folders, and that's general shader utilities on my GitHub. Fun stuff that's worth checking out is the dithering looks really nice. All of the various kinds of, I did almost every single basic kind of like warp, like geometric warping thing I could get. So there's like fisheye, there's shearing, there's like a shear matrix, there's spiral in addition to rotate. I still do not really have like Y or X rotations in a useful manner yet, and I'm not actually sure if I can do that purely within the fragment shader. I'm actually almost positive I can't really do that purely within the fragment shader. Is what it is, but for anyone interested in shader stuff and development, check out my GitHub, and you can see sort of part of the output from Gravity Waves. Let's see, so that's Gravity Waves. Desktop updates, literally don't have time to do it. I have a lot of great ideas for the desktop, but once again, no time. I've been thinking about trying to put together, yeah, it's all a GLSL, shader GLSL, same thing, more or less. Desktop versions, I would like to do some updates for them and try to fix things up. I have no possible idea when that could happen. I was thinking about maybe trying to do a fundraiser so I could at least like devote like a month to working on it and adding some bonus stuff in, like finally finishing up the temporal vortex for the desktop. And yeah, what are the other things I wanted to do for that? There's a lot of things I wanted to do. But yeah, desktops, and I don't know that there's anything anyone can do. Oh yeah, well, the thing is they're not like fully written shaders. You can't just like copy and paste them as is. They're shader functions. They're functions you could use within a larger shader. So you'd have to have something else written to actually execute them. But what they are is I just tried to like take a functional approach to like how does a video mixer work. I still haven't put up. There's one final section to there's geometry, there's color. The color has a lot of pretty useful things and some actually completely useless things that I might throw away. And then there's the mixing thing. And the interesting thing about the mixer is this sort of matrix mixing, the channel by channel matrix mixing. And that's kind of the main thing that would really make gravity waves like a very juicy thing in general is matrix mixing, because there's not really anything else that lets you do that. That and the additive and subtractive and multiplicative mixing and all that stuff. But yeah, maybe I'll try to do like a GoFundMe or something, or put together like some sort of live stream in the spring to be like, hey, let's raise money to update the video waves things, because I really don't like doing that shit where you're like put like a pop-up in them and be like, hey, throw some PayPal things at someone for doing this. But at the same time, like, I just literally can't make the things happen if I don't have money these days, so. But yeah, so that's about it for the main things I wanted to talk about here. We can open up the AMA in a second if anyone has any specific questions they want addressed. There was one more thing. Oh yeah, so bonus images. I will have some time to finalize a couple of the bonus images I've been working on for the Raspberry Pi. I don't think any of them would really be something I would sell. These will just purely be images that are bonuses. Let me go pick up the list. The one really like the silliest one that like doesn't really, hello, it's like probably the most ridiculous thing I could have added. It's just called Gleaming the Hypercube, and it's literally just the Hypercube animation from VideoWaves. With a couple of controls that you can like control like the rotation speed and like the hue and like the size and everything, but it's literally just like a rotating Hypercube. I don't know if anyone else would actually use that. I used it a couple of times in the studio just for like testing things. Alright. But yeah, so new things to add into there. So things I could add as bonus images, and these would be pretty easy for me to whip together, and then I could just toss them into the master boot before I finish up the final 1.5 updates. Hello World text editor. Not really anything very special there. It would just be like a text editor. You control a keyboard to it, and then you'd also use the nano control to do things like size, indentation, like or alignment, just like maybe like 4 or 5 really basic formatting things, maybe a couple of fonts you can scroll through, maybe adding like drop shadow or some shit. But yeah, just a simple text editor function. I've been sort of playing with a couple of different ways to do that. I've settled mostly on incredibly low level, like not even code-based ways to do it, but I think doing it within the code would possibly lend itself to doing some pretty more awesome things. Another bonus image we could toss in would be like a convolution, like a very simple convolution-based editor, and what it would do is basically it would do basically 1 or 2 filter passes on an input with an optional like feedback path, and then what the controls would just basically be, so on your Nano the controls would just basically be like, this would be what is the radius, like how far out are you going, and like maybe adding like a Gaussian distribution over that, and then this would just be like the weight. So very, very simple, just sort of radius and weight for each one of these things. And, you know, I'd have like a couple of presets. Probably the basic preset would be sharpen, blur, edge detect, and then maybe like emboss. So I think 4 basic preset filters, and then from each one of those you could just kind of like go off and dial your own filter in. Just like a Perlin noise generator. Like 2-dimensional Perlin noise, just a noise oscillator. There's this one really silly thing I worked on that was like a live sampling time stretcher. It would let me I could just sample like a couple of seconds of video and then like play it backwards, play it forwards, slow it down, speed it up. I didn't really add anything smarter in terms of like using optical flow or any kind of CV tools to like make that sexier. It was really just simply like I wanted to be able to sample something on the fly because I was testing something else out and I needed to be able to see what was happening like slowed down. And the other thing would just be like some pretty simple like just like making like kaleidoscope effects. You plug it in and it spits out a kaleidoscope version of the output. Yeah, if any of those are interesting, anything that people would like actually want to use, if you speak up now, it's more likely that I'll put something out. Otherwise, I'll probably just do gleaming, the hypercube, the convolution thing, and maybe the Perlin noise thing. Yeah, so that's the bonus images. And what else? Oh yeah, nobody gives a shit about this, but I'm also going to update chromatic aberration to be 8 bands instead of 4 bands. And so 8-band colorizer and 8-band solarizer with 8 LFOs for each thing. So that's sort of a little bit... for me personally, I'm very excited about that, and I think people over 40, 45 who use these are usually pretty excited when I talk about colorizers. Everyone else is just kind of like, why even? So, yeah. So I think I do have some ideas for like more fun things to do for Phosform, but even less people care about Phosform than they do care about colorizers. So that's really stretching people's patience to talk about that one. Yeah, so I think, yeah, we'll do this convolution thing, we'll do the titler thing, and hypercube, and we'll see what else I end up having time to do, and that'll go in the next master boot section. Yeah, it's totally like an age thing, the colorizer, solarizer thing. But yeah, I think at this point I can just kind of open things up to the AMA section if people have any questions. I will just be playing around with the Waaave Pool in the meanwhile, so yeah, feel free to throw some questions at me. If I don't really get too many questions, then I'm going to make some dinner and drink some more tea. But yeah. have I considered adding, saving, recalling presets on RPi stuff using a USB keyboard? Yes and no. So I've tried doing presets with Waaave Pool, and I kind of keep telling this to people every time someone asks. The presets don't really work the way you think they will with Waaave Pool. Like the main thing that you think is going to happen is that you like I get to this state, and if I just hit 2 buttons and I save it and I turn it off and I come back to it, if I just hit those buttons, I think I will come back to this. That's just literally not how like video feedback works. So not adding save states for Waaave Pool was just kind of a way for me to like not have to deal with people telling me that it's broken constantly. Otherwise, for the other things, I think it would actually work, but then it would just be like, yeah, it would be a thing of adding on like the keypad thing and the USB keyboard. So I'm leaning towards being against presets. But as I work on the LFOs, I will kind of be thinking about what are some things, like LFOs will kind of like fall under like barely supported things. So if I can have this little like world of things that I barely support, then I'll throw the, I might throw like save states in there too. I did actually, so for the Gravity Waves does actually have save states and a whole setup for that. So like I do know how to make it work. It's just more of a question of like I literally can't make it work the way anybody wants it to on Waaave Pool, and that's sort of the main thing that people use, that and video waves. So that's sort of where I'm stuck at. But yeah. Separate play and record button for motion control. I'm looking at it, but I just like I'm running out of buttons, and just like the way part of what I was trying to do for this giant update was like fix how that works. But as is, I think it's still just gonna have to function as like a looper more so than like anything else. Like everything will just kind of like get added on and get added on. The only really way, like I'm just like running out of buttons for things. So maybe adding on the USB keyboard thing, but then that kind of like makes it frustrating for people who don't want to like any room. A shift or alt key. I guess I don't know what shift or alt key means in this section. But yeah, basically probably not anytime soon on the motion control thing. I'm still working on other solutions that'll work a little bit better in terms of like automating things. The LFOs are working out pretty nicely. The orb weaver thing, the huge pain in the ass to work with for that is simply just designing the GUI. That's kind of like, I don't really know how to make GUIs work usefully or pleasantly. It took me, it was like over the course of several months to actually like figure out how to like resize the GUI on the Raspberry Pi so it would like match up the hold down shift key and all functions on the other buttons are in alt mode. I'm really hesitant to change any of the, I kind of locked myself into the, how the nano control works right now. So everything, like pretty much every toggle is set up to be on or off instead of momentary. So to add like a shift or an alt key onto the nano control means I'd have to change the nano mapping. And that I'm just kind of, I don't want to do that because that's going to fuck people up too much. That's sort of how I'm making the LFOs work, is by using like the keyboard, like a USB keyboard as like a momentary thing. So like hold down button 1 and then I move one of the keys and that controls the LFO for that parameter. So in terms of like expanded, barely supported Waaave Pool functions, that's kind of where like alt key and shift key things are going to be at. So yeah, it is possible that we could do something like that for the motion controls, but I wouldn't expect it to happen soon. Yeah, USB keyboards, and especially like those little like cheap ass, like the ones that look like a game controller that they make, like I would recommend those for people who are interested in sort of exploring this zone for that, instead of like a full-sized one, because you could actually like toss that in like the same bag you toss your Pi in. Yeah. So, any more questions? Yeah, there's a lot of awesome options for USB keyboards. Raspberry, oh yeah, that's actually a good point. So I've been talking to people who are working for the Raspberry Pi. Numpads are kind of out of the question, and it's a really uninteresting story as to why they are, but we'll just throw numpads. Just take it from me, numpads not worth it. It's a completely uninteresting story as to why numpads suck for this kind of thing. But yeah, so I did talk to someone at the Raspberry Pi Foundation, people who are like sort of like deciding or like in charge of like what actually is like going on with like the future of various Pis and stuff like that. Basically, the Pi 3Bs are being phased out over the next year or two, and will be replaced in their eyes by the Raspberry Pi 4, 1 gig or 2 gig. So something else I'm already sort of like thinking about trying to make time for first quarter next year to do will be making sure that everything will get upgraded to Pi 4's 1B or Pi 4 1 gig or a Pi 4 2 gig, hopefully by next summer. So pretty much everything's going to have to migrate to Pis at some point, or Pi 4s. If the driver issue is still like fucking me up, I guess I'm just going to have to like fix that myself. But I feel like one person has to have figured out the weird GL thing going on in the meanwhile. And if not, then maybe I'll be able to like hack something with like one of the older operating systems to like use a new kernel with an old operating system on the new hardware and see how that plays. But yeah, Pi 4s, everything's going to be migrating to Pi 4s, and we'll be able to find out what kind of hardware boosts we might get from that. I want to make sure everything stays at the same price points, so that means probably the 2 gig, Pi 4 2 gigs might be like, you know, where we're at in terms of like what we're working on. I'm not sure the 8 gig models would actually offer any sort of boost for this kind of stuff. The 4 gig ones, maybe. I'm not gonna like, you know, talk out of turn or anything, but it seems semi-plausible that we could at least do some kind of like 720p output for some of the things here. So migrating up would offer some level of performance boost at no cost to like the actual item. But yeah, Pi 4s, it's gonna have to be a thing, so we'll figure it out. Unless of course like I actually like get my shit together and can like work out like a nano and or FPGA solution thing in the meanwhile. Pretty unlikely, but might happen. (720p, 60 frames per second. I didn't say 60 frames per second. You said 60 frames per second. I think the main problem with 60 frames per second is USB input. If I'm still going to be working with like the cheapest possible USB inputs for these, 60 frames per second is just like, well, some things would work, but it would just be doing things like double time as the USB input, which I'm not sure exactly if that would be like useful or fun or not. Well, if that's all people have to say, I'll start to fade this one out, I think. Where's this at? Let's see. This music didn't get flagged earlier, so let me see if I can put the next track on, and that'll move us on out. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, thanks for stopping by. Oh yeah, I wasn't gonna tell people why I'm not on Facebook anymore. I didn't really even like think about it. I just stopped using it, and it's actually like, you know, more of a pleasant existence to not use Facebook at all. I do check the group every week or 2 weeks or so. I haven't really seen anybody bringing up like issues that are not really like that aren't like super like aren't already covered in like one of the troubleshooting things, or that someone else isn't like able to like resolve, or are just kind of like beyond like the scope of like anyone solving. Like if it's just like you're having issues with HDMI, like yeah, everyone has issues with HDMI, yo. It's a crappy ass single. But yeah, I check scan lines a little bit more. Yeah, Facebook is shit. Like, it was like it's the groups are useful. Some of the groups are useful, and like, you know, I used to like convince myself I would hang out there for video circuits or wherever, but then I like go back and I just look at it and I'm just like, ugh, gross. Yeah. So that's why no Facebook. You can always, I respond to every single email I get for some reason. If you're really having issues, you can always email me. If it's something that I've written about already, I will ask you to just read that first. Yeah, definitely email me. Check out the Scanlines zone. Scanlines is way better than Facebook. Scanlines.xyz. Thanks everyone for stopping by. Yeah, don't forget to go check out the new beta version of the Waaave Pool image and see what's going on there. 100% make sure to read the text that's in there. And then I'll just kind of fade myself out.
چقاو ساينس ينقاف چقاو ساينس كرقاي مايم شا ينقاف چقاو ساينس